guys, I'm here with Turbo Driver 123. Check him out on Instagram, and we're going to be discussing what makes a video game a masterpiece. You want to start us off with something?
Oh yeah. So I predominantly play card games. I go with the Forza franchise, and so the new Forza game, Motorsport, came out, and definitely improvements over the last one. Like graphics, you adjust it on console, which wasn't available much on the last one. Physics are definitely improved. Like the last game had way too much oversteer in all the corners, and like feedback through the wheel definitely wasn't the best. But in the games I play, physics, graphics, definitely like big things. So
Yeah, gameplay is definitely one of the most important parts of a game. If your gameplay is boring, then I'm not going to care about how good it looks or the story or anything else, because I'm just not going to come back to play your game. I want to be immersed in a game, like driving around America in the Crew. I want to feel like I'm in a car. I want to feel like I'm going 100 on the freeway, right? Especially if you've heard about the Spider-Man games. They got a lot of praise for their web swinging because they made their most basic mechanic so fun and engaging. So many people were brought to the game that might not have played it originally.
yeah, I remember like I don't have a PlayStation, but even just watching people in those games was entertaining. Like, those videos where they'll like have stories and they'll have a video game in the background. The ones that have those Spider-Man games, just it increases entertainment level by a massive amount.
Definitely, definitely. And if we didn't have like engaging mechanics, then gaming YouTubers wouldn't be a thing. It's like sport. If your sport, like, okay, netball is kind of boring to watch. Netball and soccer especially, because nothing happens in such a long amount of time. For soccer, so little goals are scored, and for netball, there isn't too much running around.
Yeah. But like if you have something like basketball, it's always fast paced, dribbling, you got your different moves that people do, everyone's spreading throughout the court. It's a much faster paced game.
Definitely, definitely. Um, I also think that in like modern days, the modern day and age for especially like millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, with those YouTube shorts that you've got someone maybe talking and then the Subway Surfers gameplay. It's so simple, but it's constantly changing, and it's such a fast pace that it keeps people engaged. And like I've found myself watching some of those, and I'm not paying too much attention to the guy that's actually speaking. I'm watching the gameplay because it's constantly moving around and changing.
Yeah, movement definitely a big thing in games. One thing I've noticed is like Forza Horizon 5, probably one of the most praised Forza games ever. But one of the big things that's lacking is the map is just so flat. It's the same thing repeatedly. Like you have these like small hills and it will just be brown on either side. And it's for like that'll just be what you have for 5 minutes straight, even though you're going at speeds that you would never achieve in real life.
Yeah, that leads into not necessarily world building, but map design. And I know you'll be happy, graphics. If your game looks boring, then people aren't going to be super engaged. However, I 100% think that graphics matter. However, if you're obsessing over the minute details, like for instance, don't take this as a shot, but if you're obsessing over the detailed carbon fiber on your car, not many people are going to notice that. But taking like indie games, for instance, they often get written off because they don't have the most realistic graphics, but they've got such an interesting art style that it keeps you engaged in the actual game.
Yeah. So I definitely think like even if it's not photorealistic, it's definitely got to be a bit more in your face with like brighter colors and like even especially reflections. Reflections is something that I think is really important for all games to get right. Like it's something that would just pass over your head when you're thinking about it, but it makes such a big difference, particularly like if you're in a rainy setting.
Oh, definitely. Um, Back when Cyberpunk first released, the shadows were so janky. Uh, it's not necessarily a reflection, but you're still seeing your character move. The shadows were very janky, and that was really off putting.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played Cyberpunk, but I definitely remember when it came out, all over YouTube, it was all about how bad the graphics system was as well. And another thing is with Forza Horizon 4 particularly, I remember I went back and I played that a few weeks ago for the first time, maybe a year, and the rendering quality was so bad. Like in new games, stuff that would have been like 500 meters to a kilometer away, you could still see with basically as much level of detail as your screen resolution would give. But in Forza Horizon 4, a 2018 game, so it's not too old, like a tree that was 300 meters away was like super blocky and single colored, and it was so like bad to play as well because graphics is such a big part of that franchise.
Yeah. So with I believe it was Redfall. Let me just look it up. It was there was a game that was promising. Yeah, no, it was Redfall, promising that it was going to be a huge step in graphics and open world games. And it was really empty, and everything was just rendered extremely poorly, and it made the game feel cheap and unpolished. Now, I'm not saying that your game has to look really good, like from far away. It just needs to be consistent. And I think in Minecraft, even, it's consistent in the way that all of its blocks are rendered, and the fact that it's a more cartoony and simple art style really gives it a nice charm that makes you feel at home while you're playing it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Redfall now, and I can definitely see, like, particularly with the player models, like the characters stuff, some of them are done actually quite well. And there's a couple of others where it looks like the character models look the same as what you would find in one of the original Halo games. It's just a bit underdone.
Yeah. Um. The reason I personally think the reason that it looks so bad isn't because the models are bad. Because I mean, you compared it to the original Halo models from Halo CE. I think that they still look really good. It's just that it's inconsistent. The Redfall player models, some of them, or just in general, the models in Redfall, some of them look really good, even if it's more of a cartoony style. But some of them, some models just are so poorly done that it makes the game feel rushed. Whereas for Halo, all of the models look quote unquote bad, but at least they all look the same, and that makes it feel like a well done and polished game. I'm sure there was a bad Ubisoft game that I'm forgetting. Assassin's Creed Watch Dogs. That's what I was thinking of. With Watch Dogs, Legions specifically, and Watch Dogs as well. We were promised in the gameplay trailers such an interesting and, well, full game. But when it released, a lot of people came to realize that there was a little text in the bottom of the trailers saying not actual gameplay footage, and we realized that we essentially got clickbaited with a game. It was really buggy. The graphics were, I wouldn't say corrupted, but sometimes the models would just like bug out as well. Similar thing that happened with Payday. It was looking really good up to its release. The Act Man made a video praising it, and then it released, and it was in a terrible state. And this really is what makes indie games almost the new AAA, with how much they're able to achieve with only a team of like 1 or 2 people.
Yeah. When you said the not actual game footage, that's like, for me, that's a massive turn off. Like, it's just such an insult. Like, to your player base, you're releasing content to them, and then you're saying not actual game footage. It's almost like you're scamming them, like you're taking their money and you're saying this is what you're gonna get, and then you give them something that you weren't even happy with maybe 10 years ago, but today it's just an absolute scam when they do that.
Yeah. Something else that I wanted to talk about a bit was world building. This goes hand in hand with story. If your game has any form of story, you have to build up the world and the rules for the universe, how everything works and stuff like that. And with I'm going to use Star Wars. It's not a game, but that's fine. It in the first movie, it outlines the rules. It shows us that there are aliens. The Force is a real thing. There are these mystical Jedi Knights that need so much training to wield a lightsaber effectively, and we're told that the Jedi and the Sith are such excellent fighters that you wouldn't be able to survive a duel without them. So throughout the first 6 movies, we see this consistent throughout. And then when 7 comes, this random girl that has no training is immediately able to pick up any skill, flying a starfighter that she's never seen, using the Force when she's never even interacted with anyone who possesses those abilities. She is strong enough to influence the mind of others. And then near the end, she almost overpowers a Sith Lord by interrupting him using the Force to grab a lightsaber. And then she survives a duel with him. That gets fans really mad because you're being super inconsistent with you've broken tons of the most fundamental rules of your universe.
Yeah, I reckon Star Wars is probably, even though it's not a game, it's still one of the best examples of that. Like, I hate those sequels. Yeah, I don't know any game examples, but yeah, Star Wars definitely a good example of how you just cannot break the rules because it ends so badly.
Yeah. This can even really be linked back to gameplay. If you've got an interesting enough world, like take for example, Halo or The Witcher, if you're gonna build an interesting world with tons of lore, of course I'm gonna want to come back to your game. I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna spend hours poring over the different bits of lore that interest me, like learning about different species, different characters, different organizations.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Need for Speed games?
Partially, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're quite interesting because, like, I think Need for Speed, I think it might be Underground. I think don't like people in the comments don't get mad at me if I'm wrong about that one, but it was the one with the famous BMW, and a lot of people like that game. Like even today, it was like a 10-year-old game or something like that. People loved it. It's like people made cars in real life, spent probably six figures on a car just to replicate the one they drove in that game when they were a kid. And it was an absolute masterpiece. But then you have other Need for Speed games that are just so hated. Like they're just so badly put together. Like the new one, Need for Speed Unbound, it wasn't an absolute failure, but particularly with the driving physics, it just felt so empty. Like every car drives the same. The car noises were way too quiet, and it was just overall a very boring game to drive around in.
Their previous like games and using the title Need for Speed clearly would have brought in a lot of people with their previous like wins masterpieces. They would have brought in a lot of trust for the Need for Speed title, and they just figured, okay, we have this huge name. People want a new game. How little work can we do to make as much money as possible? And that's really consistent with EA, especially with the modern Battlefront games. You've got the loot box system, just trying their best to put in as little effort as possible, make a new game under an existing title to make as much money as possible. Do you think if a game has a lot of influence on later games in the genre, do you believe that that game should be considered like a classic or a masterpiece or something along those lines?
I mean, I reckon like some games do influence without being a masterpiece, but like other games, yeah, I reckon because like in the Forza community, the old games, it doesn't matter how good they were for today because of how fast the Forza has evolved. It doesn't compare. But if you go back to like Forza Horizon 1 and 2, I see people who are still like absolutely invested in these games, and you can see like the very bare bones of Horizon 5 in these games. Like you can see when the different upgrade systems involved like came about, and when Forza Vista came in, all the different things. And you can just see like this is the bare bones of the game I played today. I didn't play the new one, but yeah, I reckon definitely an older game, if it's had an influence, is definitely a masterpiece.
We mentioned GTA was released in what, 2013, September of 2013 it was. A lot of games from that, I reckon the 2008 to maybe 2014 is the prime time where you find those masterpieces. I don't think Halo CE was like 2001. Yeah, it was 2001. Screw that. But something like Halo Reach, which I'm pretty sure was 2010, 2012, The Last of Us 2013, Modern Warfare 2 2009, all of these are such amazing games, and they were all in that time span. I think that's because that was a prime time. It was when computers were good enough they could handle graphics that still hold up today. Think Halo Reach looks beautiful even still today. The Last of Us, which was a PS3 game, is somewhat indistinguishable from the PS4 and to some degree the PS5 reboot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. These days, like the games don't really have too much story. Like even cutscenes in games, that's something I've noticed has really gone downhill since that prime period. Like I remember I've seen videos of Forza Horizon 1, like the cutscenes were similar to what you would see in like a 2015 Need for Speed cutscene. They're like actually like an animated movie, but close to realism. And now these days in Forza Horizon 5, a cutscene is just you have background like speaking, and then there'll be three people standing completely still right next to a car. It's so boring. Like that prime time, like even cutscenes, I can't like it's so bad that even cutscenes have just gone completely out the window.
Yeah. Look, I don't think I agree with you that a lot of story and cutscenes and methods of storytelling have really gone downhill. I don't think it's necessarily good to write off all games from the modern age. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Something like God of War, God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us 2. All of these are fairly modern games, but they've gotten a team working on them that is really passionate about what they're doing. And that is a common denominator between all masterpieces. You have to have a developer that is passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, because like I reckon the amount of passion that the developers put into the game is the same amount of passion that the player will put into the game when they're actually playing it, because you get out what you put in. I think I was the thought of one of the like least like most effort in games, like one of the best games ever created. Like I've never personally played it myself, but I think we should touch on this because you can't do what makes a good game video without this game, GTA 5, right? If there are particular reasons why I haven't played this game, but I've seen other people play this game. Wasn't it like a 2013 game or something like that?
Yeah, I think it came out in 2013, around about.
It's such an old game, but it's got like so many different things you can do on it. I've seen such good like mod support on PC, like particularly around the car culture side. Massive amounts of mods can go on that game. Like the map I've seen is pretty good. There's some weird but still fun mechanics in there, like where you can fly around on a motorbike. You can fighter jets, bikes, planes, cars, boats, machine guns, rocket launchers, pretty much anything a guy would randomly want to do when they're sitting on the couch on their phone and then something just pops into their head. GTA has it. And I reckon that's the reason why for the last 10 years, so many people have just continuously played it.
Yeah, the mod supporters definitely carried it, but the vast amount of things you can do just makes it so entertaining for people. Goat Simulator is a prime example of this as well. Personally, not a huge fan of Goat Simulator, but there is just so much to do that if you start playing, it's kind of hard to not have fun, especially when you're with friends.
Yeah, I can still remember like first or second time I hopped on Goat Simulator, I was summoning the UFO to take me into outer space. And that was probably like a combination of the most fun I've had in a small game and the most unrealistic thing I've done in a small game. Summoning a UFO with a goat.
Look, I reckon we do one last question. Do you think in the coming years, do you think there is hope for a new game to come out and really change the scene on how developers, the attitude of huge AAA developers, that they have towards creating games, and that they will strive towards making a masterpiece such as the games in that 2008 to 2014 period? Or do you think that they will just ignore fans, critics, and will just continue on the dangerous path that they're headed towards for simply just making money?
I reckon there is still potential for like a new game to come out that really change the scene and show people what a proper game is supposed to look like. Because I remember well, this I don't remember, but I've heard people talk about 2014 game. I think it was Drive Club. 2014 game. So back then, car game graphics weren't good, but that was just top notch quality. Like that was the same quality as car games I've seen come out even in the past couple of years, and that's like that's a 9-year-old game. So if something like that can happen back then, I reckon still definite potential for a new game to come out that just changes the scene. But also, if one doesn't, then we could definitely see a massive decline in game quality where it's all about the pre-launch look and not what people actually experience in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Look, if one of those games does come out, it's going to be either from one of those very few AAA game devs that actually cares about their games, or it's going to be from an indie game developer. There's definitely a rise in indie games, and I think in the coming years there will be a huge competition between indie games and AAA games that will really cause those developers to step up and strive towards Halo, The Witcher, Last of Us, even like the Crew level of just amazing. Yeah, this has definitely been a very good discussion on the state of modern gaming compared to the classic games, the masterpieces. Hopefully it'll further start a discussion to really push those AAA game devs to strive for the quality that they used to. Look, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out Turbo Driver 123 on Instagram. There'll be a link in the description. And I'll see you all later.